Welcome to episode 3 of the Ignorant Artist Podcast. Today we're going to take you someplace you've never been before, inside the Scriptorium. But before we do that, I want you to do 3 very important things for me. I want you to subscribe to the channel, I want you to like the video, and leave a comment. This helps tell YouTube that people are watching. Last episode we talked about the animals, the calves and the sheep and the goats, whose skins became the pages of the most beautiful books ever made. Today we go inside the room, where the pages become something extraordinary. The Scriptorium. That's the Latin word for the place where things are written. But it was much more than that. It was a production facility, a highly organized, brutally cold, almost completely silent factory, run by monks, who it turns out had opinions about almost everything.
Picture a room, stone walls, stone floor, high narrow windows that let in light but not much warmth. Candles when the light fails, rush lights when the candles run out, a faint smell of parchment, of oak gall ink, of beeswax. And underneath it all, something faintly animal that never quite goes away. That is the Scriptorium, the room where illuminated manuscripts were made. The word comes from the Latin scribere, to write. But calling it simply a writing room is like calling a print studio simply a room with ink. It misses everything that actually happened there. The Scriptorium was the most sophisticated production environment in medieval Europe. Long before the factory, long before the assembly line, the Scriptorium had already figured out division of labor, quality control, sequential process, and specialist workers. It just did it with monks, and quills, and a great deal of prayer. Let us start with the cold. Medieval scriptoria were almost always cold. Stone buildings in Northern Europe before central heating, in winter, with high ceilings and small fires that warmed the room approximately not at all. Monks wrote in their habits, often with fingerless gloves. Some wore extra wool sleeves called arm warmers specifically designed for writing. Cold fingers cramp. Cold ink thickens. Cold parchment becomes stiff and difficult. And yet they worked. For hours, in near silence. Every day. The silence was not optional. The Scriptorium was a place of work and therefore a place of discipline. Talking was generally prohibited. If a monk needed something, there was an entire system of hand signals. Need more ink? There was a gesture for that. Wrong page? Gesture. Need the prior to come and look at something immediately because you have just made a catastrophic error on the folio you have been working on for 6 weeks? There was probably a gesture for that too, though the surviving records do not specify what it looked like. Now, the people. The Scriptorium was not staffed by one person doing everything. It was a production line, and everyone had a role. At the top was the armarius, or the precentor in some houses. This was the monk in charge of the book program. He decided what would be copied, assigned the work, managed the materials, and maintained quality. He was, in modern terms, the creative director and the production manager simultaneously. A very stressful job, made more stressful by the fact that he also had to attend every church service, just like everyone else. Below the armarius came the scribes. These were the monks who actually wrote the text. And here is something that surprises people. Not all monks could be scribes. Writing was a skill. A demanding, technical, physical skill. A scribe had to master not just the letter forms of whatever script was in use, but the pressure, the spacing, the consistency, the ruling of lines, the management of the quill. The quill had to be cut and trimmed constantly, a process called pointing. because a blunt quill makes ragged letters, and ragged letters in a manuscript that is supposed to last forever are not acceptable. A skilled scribe could produce perhaps 2 to 4 pages per day, on a good day, in good light, with a fresh quill, without a headache, without the bell ringing for nones. The bells, by the way, were constant. The monastic day was structured around 7 periods of prayer, each announced by bells. The scribe working on a difficult passage would hear the bell, put down the quill, attend the service, return to the scriptorium, pick up the quill, find his place, and try to remember exactly what a letter form he was halfway through when the bell rang. This happened 7 times a day, every day, for years. After the scribe came the rubricator. The rubricator added the red elements. The word comes from rubrica, Latin for red ochre. Red was used for headings, for the first letters of sections, for the little notations that told a reader where they were in the text. The rubricator worked through a manuscript after the scribe had finished, adding these elements systematically. Different work, different skill, different person. And then the illuminator. The illuminator was the artist, the one who added the decorated initials, the border ornaments, the gold leaf, the miniature paintings that could take weeks for a single page. The illuminator might be a monk, but not always. By the high medieval period, secular professional illuminators were regularly brought in for major commissions. The distinction between sacred work and professional craft was already blurring. Gold leaf in a manuscript was applied using a technique that required a substance called gesso as a base, which was then gilded and burnished to a mirror shine. The gilding had to be done before the pigment work because the burnishing could damage painted areas, which means the illuminator had to plan the whole page before beginning any of it, anticipating how every element would interact, sequencing the work, thinking 3 steps ahead. And then there are the margins. While the scribes were copying sacred text with painstaking precision, and the illuminators were laying gold leaf with the concentration of a surgeon, something else was happening in the borders of these pages. Something nobody fully understands to this day. Rabbits hunting knights, snails in full armor engaging in combat, hybrid creatures that are half human, half something that has no name, a monkey playing bagpipes, a bishop being eaten by his own congregation. We are going to dedicate an entire episode to this, because it deserves one. For now, just know that it happened. That the same hands producing some of the most reverent religious art in human history were also drawing armed combat rabbits in the margins. And nobody is entirely sure why. That episode is coming. Hold on to that thought. As a printmaker, this is the part that gets me. The illuminator's problem is exactly the printmaker's problem. You cannot see the finished work until it is finished. You have to hold the whole image in your head, in sequence, and execute each step in the right order. Miss a step, make a mistake in the sequence, and you have ruined weeks of work on a page that took months to prepare. The great scriptoria of Europe were not all in one place. They were scattered across the continent, and each developed its own character. The Irish monasteries, particularly those founded by Columba and his followers in the 6th and 7th centuries, produced some of the earliest and most distinctive work. Iona off the Scottish coast, Lindisfarne on Holy Island off Northumberland. These were outposts at the edge of the known world, and the manuscripts they produced had an energy that matched their location. Dense interlace, zoomorphic forms, letters that seemed to be alive and moving. We will go deeper into the Celtic tradition in the next episode. On the continent, the Great Reform of Charlemagne in the 8th and 9th centuries changed everything. Charlemagne wanted a unified script across his empire, standardized, readable, consistent. The result was the Carolingian minuscule, the ancestor of the lowercase letters you are reading right now. A monk at Tours developed it. Charlemagne mandated it. Within a generation, scriptoria across Europe were producing manuscripts in a script that was more legible than anything that had come before. This was not just an aesthetic decision, it was a political one. Readable books meant readable law, readable theology, readable administration. The Scriptorium was never just about beauty, it was about power. The monks knew this, even if they would not have put it in those terms. They understood that what they were doing mattered, that the books they made would outlast them, that in copying a text, they were preserving it, transmitting it, making it available to people who had not yet been born. There is a phrase that appears in colophons, the notes scribes sometimes added at the end of manuscripts, that says everything about how they understood their work. 3 fingers write. The whole body labors. 3 fingers, the thumb, the index finger, and the middle finger, gripping the quill. The whole body, because writing all day, bent over a sloping desk, holding a position of intense concentration for hours, is genuinely exhausting physical work. Scribes complained about it. They wrote their complaints in the margins. Bad light, cold hands, a difficult exemplar to read, a particularly boring text, the relief of finishing. One scribe wrote, in the margin of a manuscript he had just completed, "Now I have written the whole thing. For the love of God, give me a drink." That scribe has been dead for 1,000 years, and he is still funny.
3 fingers write, the whole body labors. That scribe wrote those words in the margin of a manuscript 1,000 years ago, and honestly, the same. Next episode, we're going into the margins, the rabbits, the snails, the things that monks drew when nobody was looking. You are not ready. If this hits you somewhere useful, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It genuinely helps. I'm Don Hudgens. This is Ignorant Artist. I'll see you in the next one.